Picture this. You're browsing a paranormal forum at 2 a.m. Someone posts a story about a creature that walked on 2 legs through their backyard in Montana. 7 feet tall, eyes that reflected their flashlight beam. The comments flood in. That's a Skinwalker? No, definitely a Wendigo. You idiots, Skinwalkers are in the Southwest. And here's the thing. They're all wrong, and they're all kind of right, because somewhere along the way the internet decided these 2 creatures were interchangeable. They're not. They don't even come from the same part of the continent. But the confusion? That's what we're here to untangle. I'm your host, and this is Monster Dossiers. Today, we're looking at 2 of the most misidentified creatures in North American folklore. Not because they're similar, but because we've made them similar. So let's establish something up front. I'm not here to tell you these things are real. I'm also not here to tell you they're fake. What I am here to do is look at the historical record, the cultural context, and ask why thousands of people across 3 centuries keep reporting remarkably consistent details. The Skinwalker and the Wendigo get lumped together constantly. Both are shapeshifters. Both are associated with cannibalism in some way. Both scare the hell out of people. YouTube videos use the names interchangeably. Creepypasta writers mix their attributes. And honestly, it's become a problem for anyone trying to understand what people are actually claiming to see. Because here's what most people don't know. These legends come from completely different indigenous cultures, separated by over 1,000 miles. They serve different purposes. They follow different rules. And the behaviors witnesses describe? Not even close to the same. So we're going to do something simple. We're going to look at each creature on its own terms, see where they actually overlap, and figure out why the internet can't seem to keep them straight. Let's start with the Skinwalker, because it's got the stricter definition. The Navajo call it Yi Naldlushi. By means of it, it goes on all 4s. And right there, that tells you something important. This isn't a species, it's a person. Specifically, it's a witch. The Navajo have a complex system of witchcraft beliefs, and Skinwalkers represent the darkest end of that spectrum. According to tradition, a Skinwalker is someone who's gained the ability to transform into animals, usually coyotes, wolves, foxes, owls, or crows, by committing an ultimate taboo. Most commonly cited, killing a close relative. Some sources say it involves wearing the pelt of the animal you want to become. Others mention specific rituals performed at night. Now here's where it gets interesting from a documentation standpoint. The Navajo don't like talking about this. At all, when anthropologists tried to study Skinwalker beliefs in the mid-20th century, they hit walls. Not because people didn't believe, but because discussing it was considered dangerous. There's a genuine belief that even speaking the name can draw attention. Geographically, Skinwalker reports cluster around the Four Corners region, where Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico meet, the Navajo Nation, the Ute tribal lands, and surrounding areas. There's a reason the infamous Skinwalker Ranch is in Utah, not Michigan. The abilities attributed to Skinwalkers are specific: shape-shifting into animals, mimicking human voices with unsettling accuracy, moving at impossible speeds, and, this comes up repeatedly in accounts, eye shine. That reflective glow you get when light hits an animal's eyes at night. Except it's coming from something standing upright. Behaviorally, Skinwalkers are said to be malicious. They're not mindless. They're not driven by hunger. They're witches using dark magic for harmful purposes. Cursing people. Causing illness. Spreading fear. The transformation into animals is a tool, not the point. One more detail that's consistent across accounts. They travel at night. Almost every reported sighting happens between sunset and sunrise. Make of that what you will. Now let's head north, way north. The Wendigo comes from Algonquian-speaking tribes, the Cree, Ojibwe, Innu, and others across the boreal forests of Canada and the northern United States. We're talking Ontario, Quebec, Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, Michigan's Upper Peninsula. cold country, winter country. And that matters because the Wendigo is fundamentally about starvation. The traditional description varies by region, but core elements stay consistent. It's a malevolent spirit associated with cannibalism, winter, and insatiable hunger. Some traditions describe it as gaunt, emaciated, with grayish skin stretched over bones. Others say it's massive, growing in size with each person it consumes, which means it's perpetually starving no matter how much it eats. Here's the functional difference from a skinwalker. You don't choose to become a Wendigo through ritual. You become one through circumstance, specifically through eating human flesh during times of famine. The act of cannibalism, even if done to survive, transforms you. You're cursed, and the curse is that you'll never be satisfied. You'll crave human flesh eternally. There's also mention in some traditions of Wendigo psychosis, a culture-specific condition where people become convinced they're transforming into a Wendigo and develop an obsessive craving for human flesh. Whether this was a real psychological phenomenon or a way of explaining certain behaviors is still debated. French Jesuit missionaries in the 1600s documented stories about Wendigos, their phonetic spelling, in their reports back to Europe. They didn't know what to make of it. Their framework for evil was the Christian devil. But this was hunger as a demonic force, greed made manifest, the ultimate cautionary tale against gluttony and selfishness. Geographically, Wendigo reports are northern. If you see a map of sightings, they correlate almost perfectly with the range of historical Algonquian-speaking peoples, and they correlate with harsh winters. That's not coincidence. Physically, modern descriptions often include antlers or a deer skull for a head. That's actually a more recent addition, likely influenced by pop culture. Traditional accounts more often describe an emaciated humanoid, impossibly tall, with sunken eyes and lips tattered from chewing its own flesh. Behaviorally, pure predation, no strategy beyond the hunt, no mimicry of voices, just howling, just hunger. So where does the confusion come from? First, both involve transformation and cannibalism, but in completely different contexts. A skinwalker chooses dark magic and can shift forms at will. A Wendigo is cursed by desperate circumstances and is locked into its form. Second, the internet happened. Creepypasta forums in the early 2000s started blending folklore. Writers who didn't do their research mashed attributes together. You'd get stories about Wendigos in New Mexico or skinwalkers in Ontario. Neither makes cultural or geographical sense, but it spread. Third, and this is important, witness reports get filtered through whatever framework people have. Someone in Arizona sees something bipedal with glowing eyes. They Google shapeshifter Native American and land on skinwalker. Someone in Minnesota sees the same thing. They land on Wendigo. Neither person is necessarily lying. They're just trying to categorize something that defied explanation. There's also the Until Dawn effect. That video game from 2015, hugely popular, featured Wendigos as the monsters, except they made them act like movie zombies. Same thing happened with Supernatural, the TV show. They did a Skinwalker episode, got several details wrong, but millions of people watched it, and now those wrong details are cited as fact in YouTube comments. Let's look at actual reports and see if patterns emerge. Skinwalker-attributed sightings tend to involve figures moving on all fours that are too large to be natural animals. Animals behaving with disturbing intelligence, making eye contact, following vehicles for miles, pacing outside homes. Voice mimicry. Someone hears their name called in a family member's voice, but that family member is miles away. Predominantly nighttime occurrences in the Southwest. Example, in 2014, a family on the edge of Navajo land reported a coyote following their truck at 60 miles per hour for over 10 minutes. When they stopped, it stood on its hind legs and looked directly at them before running off. The local explanation. Skinwalker. The skeptical explanation. Misidentified animal, possibly a wolf or large dog. with behavior exaggerated by fear and poor lighting. Wendigo-attributed sightings tend to involve extremely tall, thin bipedal figures in forests, an overwhelming sense of dread and wrongness, association with missing persons cases in wilderness areas, predominantly winter occurrences in northern forests. Example, the Kenora area of Ontario has multiple reports spanning decades of a gaunt giant seen near areas where hunters have gone missing. Descriptions are consistent. Over 7 feet tall, grayish skin, impossibly thin. The official explanation in most cases is that people have gotten lost and succumbed to exposure, but the consistency of the gaunt figure description across unrelated incidents raises questions. Here's what's worth noting. The fear response in these accounts is different. Skinwalker witnesses report feeling watched, stalked, like prey being toyed with. Wendigo witnesses report existential dread, a feeling that they're in the presence of something fundamentally wrong with reality. Could both be misidentifications? Absolutely. Bears, wolves, elk, moose, all can create imposing silhouettes under the right conditions. Add darkness, add fear, add cultural priming, and the brain fills in the rest. But the geographical consistency is harder to explain away. Skinwalker reports stay in Skinwalker territory. Wendigo reports stay in Wendigo territory. If it was purely psychological, you'd expect more crossover. Quick inventory of how media has muddled this. Films Antlers, 2021. Called it a Wendigo, gave it antlers, set it in Oregon. 2 out of 3 traditional elements wrong. The Last Winter, 2006. Wendigo-inspired creature in Alaska. Right region, decent execution. Skinwalkers, 2006. About werewolves, just called them skinwalkers for some reason. On TV, supernatural mixed attributes freely. Hannibal had a Wendigo that looked like a nightmare elk demon, visually stunning, culturally inaccurate. Teen Wolf used Skinwalker to mean something entirely unrelated to the actual folklore. Alright, the practical section. And I'll say this up front, if you're genuinely worried about either of these things, the survival advice is simple. Respect the cultures these legends come from and don't go looking for trouble. But let's humor the thought experiment. Against a skinwalker, according to folklore, don't travel alone at night in their territory. If you hear your name called, especially in a familiar voice, don't respond and don't follow it. Eye contact with a skinwalker is said to give it power over you. Look away. Traditional protection involves white ash, but again, this is from Navajo beliefs and should be respected as such. Against a Wendigo, according to folklore, fire, consistently cited as the only reliable way to destroy one. Don't travel deep into northern forests alone in winter. Practical advice regardless of Wendigos. If you feel overwhelming dread in the woods, trust your gut. Our instincts exist for a reason. Realistically, your actual threats in these regions are exposure, getting lost, and natural predators. Focus on those. So here's what we know. The Skinwalker is a Navajo witch who shapeshifts into animals through dark magic, geographically locked to the southwest. Behavioral pattern involves stalking, mimicry, and intelligence. The Wendigo is an Algonquian spirit of cannibalistic hunger, geographically locked to northern forests. Behavioral pattern involves pure predation and overwhelming dread. They are not the same creature. They're not even similar once you dig past the surface. Could both be explained by misidentification, cultural storytelling, and psychological projection? Sure, the skeptic in me leans that way. But could there be something to the consistency of reports across centuries? Something about certain regions, certain conditions, certain experiences that generate similar testimony from unrelated witnesses? That's the question we keep coming back to. Next time on Monster Dossiers, we're heading to Alaska to talk about the Kushtaka, the Tlingit ottermen who are somehow more disturbing than both creatures we covered today. Until then, if you're camping in the Four Corners or the Canadian Shield and something doesn't feel right, trust that feeling. Our ancestors survived by listening to their instincts. Thanks for watching.